Spotty Bowl champion, baby. Spotty Bowl LA Division Masters Division champion. So, was able to pull that off this year, but also got Angler of the Year in San Diego and LA Spotty Bowl. You only do that with consistency. You know, to get Angler of the Year, it's a measurement of each tournament, 7 tournaments in each series. So it goes for 7 months, and it's the accumulative length of your limits through the whole series to get Angler of the Year. So that is all about consistency. Hookup baits are as consistent as they come. Okay, they're gonna eat a hookup bait winter, spring, summer. They're always gonna eat hookup baits. So very, very consistent bait to use. But then when you learn to use the right colors and the right sizes for situations, it really makes it so there's no reason for anything else to ever be in your tackle box. It is the only lure you need. Okay, it is very productive, very effective, and very consistent. So we're gonna go over a Spotty Bowl 101. Tricks I've learned this year, tips, you know, I have learned over the last 2 years fishing Spotty Bowl now. You learn a lot fishing spotties every month, pre-fishing and then tournaments, especially doing 2 divisions. So it's 2 tournaments, 2 pre-fishing days every month for 7 months. You learn a lot. I mean, I've been fishing spotties for 30 years, since I was a teenager. Spotties, love fishing for spotties. It's a staple here in Southern California. Anyone can go fishing for spotted bay bass. You know, it's free to do. You can do it offshore. You can do it on a float tube. You can do it on a kayak. You can do it on a little raft, or you can do it on a full-on bass boat. You can go out and fish spotties, and you got multiple bays from, you know, San Diego all the way to Ventura that have spotted bay bass in them. So, and really, you know, doing quite a bit of smallmouth fishing, freshwater too. Smallmouth fishing, freshwater is really close to spotted bay bass fishing in saltwater. A lot of same tactics. They have a lot of similarities at the way they use structure and the meanness of them. They're just very aggressive, they're mean, they fight hard, they seek structure. So they're very similar. There just seems to be a lot more opportunity for spotted bay bass fishing than there is smallmouth fishing here in Southern California. So really popular fish, a lot of tournaments for spotted bay bass, a lot of people fish for them. It's one of our biggest markets in hookup baits is the 1/4 ounce hookup baits, and those are all mainly for spotted bay bass fishermen. So it's a really good market for us also. So I learned a lot spotted bay bass tournament fishing, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you guys, because if you're using hookup baits, I want to do everything I can do to help you catch fish with the hookup baits. Okay, so spotted bay bass fishing is a lot of fun. It just, you know, I put it this way: if I use this light rod right here for big 15 20 pound trout at pyramid with 6 and 8 pound line, rarely get broken off by one. I use the same exact rod and 6 and 8 pound line for spotties. About almost half the fish I hook break me off, and they're only 2 pounds, maybe a 3 pound every once in a while. And this kind of shows the meanness of a spotted bay bass and the structure seeking and where they live and everything else. It's a completely different species of fish than it is a trout compared to a spotted bay bass. Okay, and it's really cool to, you know, be able to fish for different fish using the same exact gear and how different it can be. So let's go over some few things that I did this year that was part of the success of my Spotty Bowl series. So first thing a lot of people ask me is about color. What color, right? Well, here's pretty much the colors I used this year. And so first thing in the morning, especially the January, February tournaments when it's still dark at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, these are always what I have on when it's dark. The Pyramid Lake chub and the standard chub. very good dark time, early morning until the sun starts breaking out and getting pretty light. I'm using a chub. And then if the water's dark, after we had a lot of rain this year, so if it's water's a little bit muddy and stuff, I'm using a chub also. So dark water, dark light, use a chub. As soon as it gets sunny though, I'm changing it out. Or not even sunny, just where it gets well lit. Okay. Sometimes it will bite the chub all day long, but typically it's a low light color. Brown, another color, they bite this low light and during the day, but what I found with the brown, it's a grass color. If you're anywhere near grass beds or just spots of grass, the brown seems to work really well around grass. Something in that grass that's brown colored that they seem to key in on, okay? Now we got these two new colors. The green pumpkin, one of our new colors. Probably caught most of my spotties this year on a green pumpkin. The close second would be the new midnight. So it mimics an anchovy or jack's melt very well. And then the green pumpkin is just a very natural color. Just every fish in the world likes the green pumpkin, including the spotted bay bass, obviously. So these were my go-to baits. Probably caught most of my spotties on both of these colors this year. And then you got the standards. The sardine green has always caught spotties. It's a color, if you don't know what color to put on, put a sardine green on. It seems to be the most consistent. It always gets bit. Sardine green. And then anchovy is another one. Very consistent. It seems to get bit all the time. So mimics the anchovy, mimics a lot of fish. But then you got the mint, which is more of a warm water. When the water starts warming up is when they seem to be turned on to the mint a little bit more. I think a lot more jack smelt start coming around, grunions start coming around. That blue mint color seems to mimic those fish pretty well. And it has a lot of sparkle in it, so when the sun's out, the mint works well. More sparkle. The more sun, the more sparkle you want. That's kind of a little rule of thumb. Sun and sparkle goes together, okay? And then here's one that might surprise you, is the rainbow trout color. We hate this mainly for trout fishing or freshwater bass fishing. Everything likes to eat a rainbow trout in freshwater. But obviously the spotties love a rainbow trout too. I don't think it has anything to do with the rainbow trout. They just like that pink lateral line, sardine top. So I've done pretty well this year on a rainbow trout and pretty much all the bays also. But I did this one in the 5/8 size because where it did better than most places is in San Diego Bay main channel. Out in the mid channel, the 5/8 trout did really well this year. So, okay, so that's colors. That's my standard colors there that are my confident colors. So that's what I kind of stick with. But what I found this year that made more of a difference than color was size. Learning to pick your size to where you're fishing, the type of fishing, whether it's cold water or warm water, adjusting the size to that, or fast current, a lot of current, or no current, adjusting to that. So learning to use what size to what situation seemed to be more of a factor of success than color for me. And that's something that I just learned really this year, spotty fishing. Always pretty much was always said, pretty much every bay in California, fish a quarter. If you're fishing main channel, San Diego Bay or Long Beach, fish a 5/8. That's really only two colors or two sizes you need. And for the most part, that is true. If you're not wanting to get a bunch of sizes, those two sizes will do most everything for you. But if you really want to dial it in and be very consistent with the hookup baits, and if you want to just stick with fishing just hookup baits, getting 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, and 5/8, and learning when to use each one of those sizes for the different situations, then it's really the only thing you will ever need in your tackle box. I promise you that. It's the only thing in my tackle box. So I'm going to go through what sizes, when to use them, and what type of rigs or what kind of rods you would fish those sizes on, okay? So we'll start with the small ones, the 1/8. Now I'm fishing, I used to not hardly ever fish a 1/8 in the bays at all, but I've noticed when fishing grass, the quarter, a lot of times you're fishing that grass sometimes in 6 feet of water, sometimes 8 feet of water, and when you throw the quarter, it's in the grass immediately. And when fishing above grass, the whole trick is to fish it as close to the grass as possible without getting into the grass. Once you feel that grass on your line, or once you feel that grass with the bait, that cast is done. Once you got grass on your jig, you're probably not going to get bit. So once you feel that grass and you got to pull it off the grass, you're done with that cast. What I found is, so I switched it up to an 1/8 ounce, so I can have a little bit slower sink, and you can work the bait slower without getting into the grass and still keep it close to the grass. So I started fishing the 1/8 ounce more in grassy areas and having pretty good success with it. So single 1/8, and then also quarter. In the winter time, when the fish are real sluggish, the water's cold, the water's crystal clear, that's another time when I'm fishing an 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce, okay? This is the rod I do that with. So like this is my Pyramid Lake trout rod. It's a Fenwick HMG. It's actually a saltwater series, inshore series, Fenwick. 7/6, 6 to 12 pound line, paired up with a Shimano Stratic 2500. Aftermarket reel handle, because you got to move those fish, okay? 8 pound braid, smooth braid, and I'm fishing 6 or 8 pound leader on this rod, and only using 1/8 and 1/4 ounce singles, okay? Some of my biggest spotties this year came on this smallest setup I have, and it's fun. Just catching regular size 10-inch spotties on this rod is fun, but when you hook a 16-incher on this rod, you got your hands full. But I get them pretty often, and a lot of people say, how you use 6 and 8 pound for a spotted baby bass? That is so light. It is pretty light, but what I've noticed is if they touch you on a rope, a piling, or anything down there, you're pretty much getting broken off. I mean, no matter if you have 6 pound on there or 15 pound, if they get in there, you got a pretty good chance of losing that fish. That's what I've noticed. So I rather get more bites and have a little bit bigger chance of maybe, just more of a chance of losing them with lighter line is about this much. The chance of getting more bites is this much. So I take the risk to get more bites, maybe lose a little bit more fish. So that's how you get away with the light line, and you just got to know what you're fishing with. I mean, you're not going to horse them super hard. You can try to keep them away from the structure. I fish a very tight drag. I mean, for 8 pound drag, I try to set it for as much drag as you can possibly have on 8 pound, because spotties don't run a long ways. Usually if you're catching a spotty and they run, they do short bursts. So when they run, you can just point the rod and then they'll stop, and then you can continue. So you don't need drag, because once you need drag is if your rod's pointing straight at them and they keep going, yeah, you're gonna need drag or you're gonna break off. But usually if they run, they stop, then you reel them in. So you just use your rod as your drag. Try to keep your drag locked so when you need it, you have it to keep them out of the structure. So that's how I roll. And like I said, I catch more than I break off, but I do break off, but I get a lot of bites. So that's the light setup. So that's early season, cold and clear water, or fishing light baits above grass. So this rod is probably the rod I've used most out of the whole rods. I usually bring 4 rods when I'm fishing. I got these 4. This big rod goes with me when I fish San Diego Bay, but these 4 right here usually go with me. This is probably the rod I use more than any of them. It's a Shimano Vanford 3000, and this is just a Bass Pro rod I've had forever, but I like how short it is. It's a 7-foot rod, and it is 12 to 20 pound line rated, so it's a short rod, pretty stout. And this is what I fish my 1/4s and 3/8 on when I'm pitching docks, mooring cans, pilings, This is my rod I fish that with. I think it has 10 or 15 pound braid on it. I usually fish 8 to 12 pound fluoro leader. And like I said, that's the 3/8 on there now. 3/8 and quarters, pitching docks and pilings. You see the big aftermarket knob. Like I said, once you hook those spotties, you gotta crank. So I like a big knob to grab onto and be able to crank those suckers away from that piling or whatever structure they're on, okay? Very important for a rod when you're pitching, when you want something to sink very fast and straight down, a lot of line on your spool, so the line comes off there very easy, so that bait falls straight down along that piling. All right, so that's the 2 light setups. We'll take a short little break and go over the bigger setups. So going over Spotty Bowl 101 with the hookup baits. All right, so on to a little bit bigger rod, and this is my double rig rod. So this is my lighter double rig rod. So this would be double rig 1/8 ounce or double rig 1/4 ounce. Now I'll explain why I use 1/8 ounce sometimes and sometimes you use quarters. Basically, if you're above grass, fishing around grass, you're getting in grass a lot, go to your double rig with 1/8 ounce. It'd be easier to keep it out of the grass. You can work the bait slower above the grass, keep it in the strike zone longer. So that's when I would do the 1/8 ounce double weights. If I'm fishing just open structure, open water structure, or open water, just clam bed, that's when I'm doing double quarters. Okay, never throwing the doubles at pilings, at mooring cans, anywhere you got to be accurate. You're just asking for trouble. It's gonna drive you crazy. Landing one bait next to the dock or next to the piling, the other bait lands up on the dock, or one bait's hitting the boat and one bait's landing in the water. It's hard to cast 2 baits that are flying like a helicopter blade accurately. Okay, so you're gonna get snagged up. It's not gonna cast accurate. You're not gonna get landed where you really want it. So it's an open water thing, the double rig. But the double rig is magic. I mean, you'll catch 2 spotties pretty often. Usually that second spotty that jumps on is a bigger fish. So it definitely has its place. It's always on the boat with me, a double rig. You're gonna want to use the Owner 3-way swivels, number 4s and number 6. 6 and 4, 3-way swivel. You can always find the 3-way swivels at hookupbaits.com. The Owners are the best to use. I've tried them all. The Owner swivels are what you want, and we always have them in stock because that's how much we believe in them. So we have a whole lot of them. You'll always find them on our website. Okay, so I'm typically fishing 8 to 12 pound below the swivel, depending on water clarity and how active the fish are and all that kind of stuff. Then I'm fishing 15 or 20 pound above the swivel. Okay. I'll show you leader links. This is pretty standard. This is still set up from my last tournament. So this is exactly how I fished the tournament. Alright, right there, that's the leader links I was fishing. It's probably 2.5 feet and 2 feet leader links. Just make sure you separate the baits by at least 5 inches. So you never have a problem. They never touch, they never tangle. Really, it's like fishing one bait, but you're fishing 2. The system works very well, very hassle-free. And like I said, you'll catch 2 pretty often. This is a Daiwa Saltis MQ 2500. And I got this on a little bit longer rod. This is an 8-foot Shimano Terramar, 8 to 17 pound rated. So I like the longer rod for fishing the double rig because they have that longer length swivel. The longer rod just kind of makes it so you can lift it and work with your line management better. And when you hook fish, it gives you more rod to bounce the fish and stuff like that. So a little bit longer rod to work with, the longer leaders you got to fish. And I like these Terramars because the Terramars have a really parabolic bend to them. And so when you're catching 2 spotties and then they're out there doing what spotties do, times 2, you got a rod that soaks up all that energy they're putting off. So that's the rod and reel setup I like for the light double rig, 8s and quarters. All right, now we're getting into the bigger guys here. So this is Another Fenwick HMG inshore, but more stout. This is a 7.6 also. This is rated 8 to 20 pound, so it has a lot of backbone to it, but still a light tip, but you know, it loads up pretty good. And then I got this big old beefy reel. It's kind of oversized for spotties, but this all about moving the spotties out of heavy structure, what this reel is all about. So this is a Stratic 5000. This is the handle it comes with, big old knob handle. You can really crank on things pretty good with it. And you can see it's kind of big for the rod, but I had a 4000 on here. I just wanted more cranking power, so I put a 5000 on here. So this is when I'm fishing that like very heavy older docks, like in San Diego Bay, the ones that just have barnacles and stuff all over them, nasty stuff. And I want to pull fish out of those. That's what I'm fishing this. Or when I'm on San Diego Bay, or even, you know, I do bring this on all the bays for when I want to pitch docks with 5/8. So this typically has a 3/8 or a 5/8 single on this rod, just like that. So 3/8, 5/8 single on this rod here. 20 pound Iserline braid, and I'm typically fishing 12 or 15 pound leader on these. I rarely fish more than 15 pound leader on spotties. Very so often I'll make go to 20 pound if I'm fishing nasty stuff and the fish are just active and biting. Or I'll fish 20 pound on my bigger double rigs sometimes, but I rarely go more than 15 for spotty fishing. Okay, so that's the stout 5/8, 3/8 single rig rod. And like I said, this is my biggest spotty setup. This one only comes with me when I fish San Diego Bay. Usually when I'm fishing all the other bays, it's these 4 rods. I got these 4 rods set up, 1/8 and quarter, 3/8, double rig, then heavy 3/8 or 5/8. That's the 4 rods I have, depending where I am in the bay fishing deeper docks. I'll grab the bigger rods. Light grass, I'll have that rod, so I'm just switching them out, right? So those are the 4 rods that are always with me that I have set up that way. When I fish San Diego Bay, I basically leave the small rod, the little tiny finesse rod. I leave that one out and bring this guy here. So this is another Stratic 5000 reel, Shimano Terramar rod. This is 8 foot, 15 to 30 pound rod. So I mean, I've gotten decent sized yellowtail and stuff on this rod, so it's a lot of rod, but it's for fishing 2 5/8. So if you're fishing San Diego Bay mid-channel, 2 5/8 is like a staple out there. That's what you fish in San Diego mid-bay. 2 5/8 works really well out there. Like I said, 12 or 15 pound. Usually with this rod I do 15 pound below, 20 pound above, number 6 swivel, and no, that's a number 4 swivel, number 4 on this one, and I think this is 30 pound braid on there. Okay, so San Diego Bay mid-channel, that's what you're going to want to fish right there. All right, and same setup is just like the small one, the 2.5, 2 foot leader, same thing. Okay, just a little bit bigger. So that's the setups. What else? Pre-fishing, time on the water. That's another thing. So now you got all your rods and you got your sizes and you know all that, what to fish where when. Okay, and one thing I did notice is, I'll just go over the size a little bit more. Wintertime, the spotties are not hungry. They are kind of dormant a little bit. Water's usually crystal clear in the wintertime a lot of times, and on through the spring. So you gotta use small baits. You know, that's kind of the standard in all fishing. When fish don't want to feed, use small baits. But then it's kind of in the springtime or the wintertime, all the bait fish is also small. Another reason why you need to go small, you gotta match the hatch. And a lot of people ask, you know, about colors. And a little theory about colors is, it's, you know, other than night and dark or low light and bright light, a lot of glitter with bright. I like a white body in dark. But other than that, it's more of matching the hatch. The color means more than anything else, is what I've learned by fishing the double rig, both in the bays and outside the bays. It's whatever bait the fish are spitting up, match the color of that bait. Or whatever bait you're seeing in the water, match the color of that. That makes, to me, matching the color of what the fish are eating at that time matters more than anything else, as in picking colors, okay? Match the hatch. So, like the green pumpkin, there's a lot of thing out there in the wild that matches a green pumpkin color. And a lot of glitter. Fish just like sparkly things. So, that's about that on color. Size, I think I covered it all. 1/8 ounce. If you really want to dial it in, 1/8 and quarters for the shallow water, 15 foot and less stuff. Then quarters and 3/8, pretty much 8 foot to 20 foot. Then 20 foot and more, make sure you have 3/8 and 5/8. Okay, in San Diego Bay, I fish all the way out to 60 feet sometimes. So in San Diego Bay, that's where you need that double 5/8 a lot of times. And those big spotties live down there sometimes. And that's another thing I found. I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but one thing I really noticed through this season is how much spotties move in a bay. They go from shallow to deep. From docks to grass, from clam beds, to wherever. I always figured, pretty much my whole life, I thought spotties had a rock that they lived on. And there's probably some that do that, but it seems like the majority of spotties, in almost every bay I fished this year, they move around in loose schools. You'll just find this area just loaded with good fish. You go to that area the next month, and there's hardly anything there, and then you'll find them somewhere where you didn't even catch a fish last month, and so the fish really move around those bays. And sometimes you find them all deep, sometimes you fish deep and you hardly catch anything, then you find them all shallow. So it really surprised me on how much spotted bay bass move about the bays, through, water temperature, bait available and stuff. They really move around those bays. So part of that is pre-fishing, okay? Spend time on the water, learn the bay you're fishing. And when you're pre-fishing, you're not there hammering as many fish as you can out of one spot. I try not to do that. You sit there, you catch them out. These are good fish. Okay, I'm gonna leave those alone and I'm gonna go see where else. Because even if you pre-fish a day before, 2 days before, that can all change. So just hammering some fish right here and then you sore lip them all, they might not bite. Oh, well, I know there's fish over here. You can go to that other spot and there'll be nothing there. So just lightly touch these fish. Okay, they're there. Let's see where the other spots. So you have multiple spots to catch fish at, and you just lightly touch each one of them. That's how I try to pre-fish. I try to more instead of catching a lot of fish, just try to find a lot of spots more than anything, and figure out, that one thing that might not change in just a couple days is shallow and deep. If they're shallow, they're probably going to stay shallow there for a week or so, unless something tragically changes in those couple days. If they're deep, they're probably going to stay deep. So that's one thing I look for when I'm pre-fishing, deep or shallow, and then once I find that pattern, okay, they're deep, find as many deep spots as I can that they're holding fish, or if they're shallow, find as many shallow spots as you can. So that kind of thing. And then if they're hanging on docks, if they're hanging on clam beds, that's more what I try to figure out. Once I figure it out, I try to find as many of those kind of spots as possible. Don't sit there and just hammer on a spot because, it's fun to catch fish, but if you want to be successful in tournaments, you don't want to do that. You don't want to find a good group of fish and sore lip all the fish you need on tournament day. So just lightly touch them, see what's there, move on. Okay, and another thing I do in pre-fishing is I go through a lot of colors. Even if I'm catching fish, all right, boy, they're biting that one really good, and it's kind of backwards. Boy, they're biting that one, I better take it off. Bite it off, put another one on, and start, fishing that one. And because I just don't want to get them too used to that color right now. Wow, they're biting that one good. I'm going to take it off and use that one on tournament day. let's see what other color they're biting right now. You know, so you have, again, find out as many colors they're biting at that time that you're fishing also. So pre-fishing and timing on the water in general is just gathering information. For me, with spotted bait bass fishing, as many tournaments as I do, fishing spotted bait bass more is gathering information. Gathering, figuring out as much as you can about what the spotties are doing, what they're eating, you know, what they're up to, more than catching a bunch of spotties. that's not important. Figuring them out, what they're up to, is way more important for successful tournament. Okay. The other thing I want to say is taking care of spotties. I mean, yeah, they're tough fish. They can stay out of the water pretty long and they're pretty durable. But if you got one that's bleeding, especially if you got one that you hook him in the gill and he's bleeding, the faster you can get that fish back in the water, the better. He'll clot up and stop bleeding. But if you leave him bleeding and you got to get the measurement and he's bleeding all over the place, I mean, try to do it fast and get that fish back. You know, that's the only way you're really going to kill a spotty, is letting them bleed. You know, or if he's hooked in the throat. With a hookup bait, I can tell you honestly, if you're hooking spotties in the throat with a hookup bait, you're doing something wrong. You're blinking on the sink or something. I have caught thousands of spotties over the last few years. I don't think I've ever caught one in the throat. It should be in the mouth, right in the mouth somewhere, easy to get out. Sometimes it'll be a little bit deep in the mouth, but never in the throat, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. But hooking a fish in the throat, that's going to kill them too if you're trying to wrench that thing out of them. Just sacrifice the bait. Let them have it. Let that spotty live. That's another thing. But, you know, try to get your measurements. I know measuring spotties can be hard with these tournaments. Get your system down. That's another thing you practice on pre-fishing. Get your system down on how to get them on the measuring board. Get your picture as quick as possible and get them back in the water. So we take care of these precious little jewels we have here in Southern California. That's our spotties. So let's take another break and we'll continue on. So we're going over what my success of this year's spotty bowl and what I've learned, and I'm sharing it with you guys. So we went over colors, we went over the sizes, where and when to fish what sizes, went over the rods you fish those size baits on for what situations. We went over pre-fishing, we went over taking care of your fish. So the other important thing is tournament day prep. Okay, I fished all these tournaments out of my Hobie kayak. I got two Hobie kayaks. I got a Pro Angler 12, and that one's fully set up with the motor guide trolling motor, nice fish finder, you know, all dialed in. And then I have what I call my travel kayak, which is the Hobie Outback with just a fish finder. Nice and simple. And that's the one when I got to travel and do a lot of traveling and visiting stores and stuff, where the kayak's going to be in my truck maybe a few days. That's the one that goes with me everywhere. That's just part of my truck equipment. It just stays in my truck when I do my travels. So I get that a lot while I'm doing the tournaments. So like, hey, I thought you had a red kayak. One's red, one's gray. And that's why I have different kayaks. So if I'm doing a tournament up in LA, in Orange County, but I had to go to Morro Bay or Bakersfield or Northern California before the tournament, and I'm hitting the tournament on my way back home, that's when I have my red one. And usually all the San Diego ones, because they're here, I have my full tournament one with the trolling motor and all that stuff on it. So so that's why you see me in different kayaks sometimes. But I love my Hobie kayaks, super durable. And if you can, put the motor guide trolling motor on there with GPS. Only reason to really put a motor on your kayaks is if it has GPS. If it don't have GPS, don't bother. But if a GPS trolling motor on a kayak makes it a whole different machine. It's like a mini bass boat. It's helped a lot. And boat positioning is huge. Fishing docks and fishing structure in San Diego Bay. It's a big deal to be in the right place with your vessel. And the motor guide with GPS helps a lot with that. But it's expensive. The motor's expensive. The lithium battery you got to get with it is expensive. So, but it's nice to have if you can get it. So the Hobie kayaks, make sure your batteries are charged. even if you don't have a motor, make sure your batteries are charged. That charges your electronics. The one that, you know, my phone plugs into my boat battery also, because if you're fishing these tournaments, your phone's dead, your tournament's over. So I make sure my phone is at 100% pretty much the whole day. So I have my phone plugged in the whole day. And it's another way of keeping the salt water moisture out of your phone, is having it plugged in all day. It's not an open hole sitting there. So I'd like to just keep it plugged in, keep it on my boat battery, the same battery that's powering my fish finder. I have powering a charger on my boat. So there's that. So make sure your kayak's ready. I load my kayak the night before, charge my batteries, it's ready to go. So I wake up in the morning, grab my coffee, and I'm out. I try to minimize the things I need to use that I got to think about in the morning. I'm not a good morning person. I basically wake up early on the mornings to go fishing. That's it. So I try to minimize the things I got to think about in the morning. So I load up everything the night before and I'm ready to roll. But I do have an unfair advantage above most guys out there, that I got a girl that tells me that you have to pre-fish. I got a girl that tells me you have to do all these tournaments. And she makes me food, she makes my coffee, everything, makes sure I'm dialed in. She makes sure my mind is not having to work so hard so I can think about my tournaments. So she is my unfair advantage. So I gotta thank JoJo. She's the part of my success with these tournaments, is having a good teammate that makes sure you're dialed in. So that's you know, pretty important to have. If you have it, you have it. If you don't, sorry, but I'm glad I have it. So it helps a lot. So yeah, make sure you're dialed in for your tournaments. Do your pre-fishing smart. Make sure you're using the right hookup baits. I mean, if you're using hookup baits, you're going to catch fish. There are a lot of guys out there catch fish with hookup baits, just using them. But to really dial it in and win tournaments in the Masters division. I mean, that's what I love about this Spotty Bowl, and it's growing. It has a lot of good competition. Some of the best spotty fishermen in California are fishing the Spotty Bowl. And you're only going to get better fishing against the best. Well, otherwise, what's going to push you to get better? You got to fish against the best. So that's why I fish the Spotty Bowl. That's why I fish SBS. That's where all the best fishermen fish. I mean, if you think you are a spotty slayer and you're not fishing tournaments, you should fish a tournament. That's going to really tell you where you stand. Anyone can make themselves look great with pictures and videos of how great they can catch spotties, but you're not going to know until you go head to head with the best around. And that's really the true way of telling you yourself how good you are, and the people you're trying to convey of how good you are to them, is fishing tournaments. That's really the true way to tell how good you are, is being on the water at the same time, at the same day, doing the same thing, fishing for the same fish as a bunch of other really good fishermen. That's what's going to tell everybody how good you are. So what else can I talk about? Spotty fishing. Get out there, do it. Like I said, use the right sizes, the right baits, right colors for the right situations. It's just going to make your catching that much better. Like we say, anyone catch fish on the hookup baits. The guys that know how to fish the hookup baits really catch fish. So, instead of having a whole bunch of stuff to use on your boat, I just have hookup baits and learn how to use each one of them for the different situations. It makes it simple. I talked to Brian, who likes to fish, yesterday. He's been champion of Spotty Bowl many times, and he was saying how jealous he is that he has all these things and 10 rods he needs to bring, and I'm out there with my 3 or 4 rods and just hookup baits. And he's like, I'm jealous of that. That is just so simple. I wish I could just fish one bait. And it is true. It's pretty awesome. So I think I covered everything with spotty fishing. And I'm going to keep on learning. I'm going to keep on sharing it with you guys. The next Spotty Bowl series starts in January. I strongly urge you, of any level you are, to join. They have different divisions for different skill levels. Join, you're just gonna learn. If anything, you're gonna learn. It's super easy to fish. You can fish any day of 3 days in the week, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's cheap. The lower the skill level, the cheaper it is to join. And it's very fair. It's well put together. Like I said, I've been fishing tournaments for many years. This is by far the series that you want to be in. And they're going to be around a while. I don't see the series going away. It's just going to keep on getting bigger. More sponsors coming in. The side pots, which you don't even have to buy into, and you make money on the side pots also. So it's really cool. It's a cool setup, cool series, and it's going to teach you how to fish. It's going to make you be the best spotty fisherman you can. And Hookup Baits is even just going to help that even more so. Okay? Thanks, guys. Hope this helps.